Thanks for listening to and watching You're Still Doing That? Up now on the podcast is Jay Watson and Kyle Wiltshire, authors of The Dead Rock Stars. If you're a big fan of the show, make sure you go to www.yourstilldoingthat.com and leave a tip or leave a comment. You can also suggest a future guest for the show. Ladies and gentlemen, Jay Watson and Kyle Wiltshire, authors of The Dead Rock Stars. Welcome to You're Still Doing That. I'm Matt Miller, and welcome to a podcast where I talk with everyday people about their childhood joys that have endured into adulthood. A podcast about the thing you've loved your whole life and continue to do, practice, and work at today. If you've been listening to the podcast, please check out my website, www.yourstilldoingthat.com, and leave a tip. You can also get caught up on all the past episodes. You can even suggest a future guest. That's right. Even your friends and family can come on the show and just drop me a note and we'll get them on here. Remember, www.yourstilldoingthat.com is the only podcast website to check out. With us today is Jay Watson and Kyle Wiltshire. Welcome to the show, fellas.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
We're excited, Matt. Thank you for having us.
Yeah, and where are you guys at today?
Jay and I both live in the Nashville area. I live in the north part of town, a little town called Hendersonville. And Jay, let you speak for yourself.
Yeah, I live in Nolensville, Tennessee, which is south of town. So Kyle and I are about an hour apart. We're probably like 40 miles apart in actuality, but it takes over an hour to kind of get from South Nashville to North Nashville. And Kyle's at the home of Johnny Cash, and I'm at the home of, Lady A, I think, lives down here.
Yeah. I was going to say, where are you guys calling in from? I was like, man, you can tell I'm Generation X right there. You guys are calling in. So I've got Jay and Kyle on the show today. They wrote a book called The Dead Rock Stars. And in the universe they created, our most beloved rock musicians are not dead, but have faked their deaths and turned secret agents to save the world from all sorts of underground evil that wants to rule the world. That's right, ladies and gentlemen. Elvis is not dead. He's just the leader of a secret agency of rock musicians that protect us from all sorts of boogeymen out there. If you've ever seen the movie Kingsmen, just insert rock musicians, and now you kind of got the idea. Which I'm a big Kingsmen fan myself. So if you guys have ever watched those flicks.
Big inspiration.
Great summary.
Yeah, big
beautiful.
Beautiful. We kind of felt like it was Men in Black and Kingsman, little goofy, little fun, little tongue-in-cheek.
It is a little Men in Black too, isn't it?
Yeah, we've had several people quote that line from Men in Black where they say, Elvis is still alive. Elvis is not dead. He just went home.
I didn't think of that. Yeah, can't believe I didn't
notice that one.
I didn't think of that one. That's right. He's not dead. He just went home. All right, so. On the show, everybody knows we always go to the past first, and we get into what you're doing now. So, Jay and Kyle, where are you guys originally from, and how did you meet?
Well, I'm from all over. I've spent time in Texas, in Louisiana, in Tennessee, in Alabama, and my folks even resided there in North Carolina, your home, Matt.
Yeah.
I never really called it home, but that's where I would go to visit them for many, many years. So yeah, I've lived all over the Southeast.
You're kind of like a Southern mutt over there.
That's right. Yeah, that's right.
some Southern gumbo.
That's right. So reading your bios, we've got a fair amount of stuff in common. Jay, I also have twin daughters as well.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
That's awesome. How old are they?
Mine are 18.
Mine are 18. How about that?
Oh, my goodness. Mine are just started their freshman year of college.
Okay. Well, my girls start next year. We let them cook a little longer in the education system.
Yeah. Mine are February birthdays.
Okay. My girls are August birthdays, and I am an August baby as well. And so getting back to where it all began, I started kindergarten at 4 years old, and I started college at 17, and I hated it. So we made sure that they would be the oldest and not the youngest.
Yeah, I started college at 17 just because my birthday was it was July, but I went into college like during the summer. My parents thought it'd be a good idea to get a kickstart.
Yeah.
Anyway, I did not like being the youngest person around.
So did they go to the same school or did they go separate schools?
No, my girls are as different as can be in all shape and fashion. So one's in university and at NC State University, and the other one is at a local community college here.
Are either of them living at home, or are they out the house?
No, the community college is home because that's in our town. But my other one's no, she's living on campus.
Okay, all right.
Yeah, one
so
wanted
halfway there.
Halfway. One was once, man. My daughter at State, she's ready to like just have her own place and work and go. She's ready for all that. And then my other one is still kind of thinking about what's going to happen. So she likes staying home.
I get it. I understand completely. My girls are both similar in the fact that they're outgoing, but one is a singer-songwriter and the other is wants to be an astrobiologist, if that gives you an indication of where they are. One of them probably has that sweater. And
I wore it just for, I'm going to talk to Kyle here in a second. I wore it just for that.
Definitely your Lego collection back there. And I'm a little more interested in the starting lineup that I see back there, but she'd want to know all about your Legos.
Yeah. So Kyle, I saw that you were a big Star Wars fan, and I am myself as for a long time. I'm a big Obi-Wan Kenobi fan. He's kind of been my favorite.
Yeah, man,
me of all time.
Did you like the show? Were you pleased with the Obi-Wan Kenobi show?
I was pleased with the show. I wasn't pleased that they showed him so I guess like I don't know what the right word is, like hurt or
life crisis,
deflated. Almost. You know, like he was beat. You know, when the show first started.
It's like he needed to get a convertible and maybe a new haircut or something, make himself feel better.
Yeah.
Well, it didn't make any sense because he was like, the Jedi, I'm not doing that anymore. But then he's like, but the boy must be trained, So right. It felt like a plot hole, honestly. Yeah, it felt really strange. It didn't quite work for me in that regard. But by the end, it won me over. Oh, yeah. And of course, I nitpicked all day long when I was like, on one hand, I was
had to hear all of it. I had to hear every bit of it. So.
He did. But I was like, I kind of liked that as Leia. It's kind of cool that they had an adventure together because you sort of expected it to be Luke. And that's how, Luke knew Obi-Wan or whatever. But it's kind of cool that it was Leia. But then for her to act so casual, like when he died at the, in episode 4, like, they have to retcon so much to make all these other stories work.
That's another thing people thought. Yeah. I love their adventure, and I love the actress that played little Leia.
She was so good.
That was great. I kept waiting. I was like, why is Obi-Wan still like not knowing what he's supposed to do? I was like, what's taking so long? But you're right. If they have all this adventure together, I was like, she pays him no mind whatsoever. And
I don't think they are plot holes. I mean, I think you can get a little nitpicky, and you're right. Retconning does matter, but like, if you put it into a little bit of the real world situation, I mean, he's lost everybody he's known. Like the person that he raised up is now, the emperor bad guy of the universe. Like it's got to be a little bit depressing. You know what I mean? And then for him to have to hide and not be Obi-Wan and not go clean house, that's got to wear on you too. Not being able to use your gifts. And that last episode, man, that was almost worth the price of admission for me.
Yeah. It was good. It was one of those, I feel like Disney can't get it right. The ones that should be series, they turn into movies. And the one that should be movies, they turn into series. So it should have been a 2-hour movie. I think it would have been a lot better if it were a 2-hour movie instead of a 6 or 8 hour, however long it ended up being, series. That's just my opinion.
But I'm still down for all of it.
Oh, of course. Oh, yeah.
So did you watch all the Clone Wars and the Rebels and Bad Batch and all that as well?
I have not been much of the animation thing. I've had the hardest time getting into watching really anything animated. I don't know why, but that's just not really my thing.
So if you didn't watch Rebels, did that flavor your like for Ahsoka?
No. I went in there knowing I was like, I'm going to miss a beat or two in the beginning, but no, Ahsoka was just fine.
Yeah.
It was just it was too much of it was great, but I wish it was been a little faster. It's a little much of a slow burn.
Yeah, with all the cartoons and stuff, you kind of have to. I feel like I needed to get on the front end and watch them in real time because I have not been, even with I've got boys that are 13 and 15, and we have tried several times to start the Clone Wars. We just can't do it.
Yeah,
it's too much. And I love Star Wars, but man,
there's just a lot of those to watch.
There's a lot. That's a lot.
There's a lot.
But I'm more of like the original trilogy, 4, 5, and 6. That is, I mean, like that's my jam. You know, that is what I love the most. Those 3 movies.
And so your knowledge of videos and what year they came out.
Let's go, Kyle.
Right. I worked at a video rental store back in the day when we were still VHSing.
Yeah.
And so for several years. So my expertise is not what year the movies came out, but what the cover of the movie was.
Yeah.
Because I remember all those covers working in the store.
Have you ever seen, I believe it was Jimmy Kimmel, Quentin Tarantino said he could do a similar thing where, because he worked at a video rental store, and he said you could read the description of any of those movies, and I can tell you what movie it was. And Kimmel put him to the test, and he read the most obscure movies, and he like nailed them all, and he knew like their original titles, and because some of the titles get changed over time, he was like, oh yeah, well that's, and he called them by their original titles and stuff. I mean, it was really cool. I was like, that's a master at work.
Yeah, he's a Jeopardy expert when it comes to that kind of knowledge. That's for sure.
It was cool.
Yep, and your guys big lovers of Highlander. I remember watching that when it came out. I thought it was the most metal thing ever when it first came.
Oh, it was kind of metal. Well, in the sense that it literally makes no sense. That's how it's metal.
Right. I was thinking you kill the person and take their powers. I was like, oh, that's awesome.
Yeah. I've been hoping that they'd reboot it. I think I've seen something about it a couple times, but I think that's
it's definitely
right
time.
For reboot.
Yeah, that's one that's a right for reboot that series.
There can be only one.
Yeah.
Highlander is huge for us because, you know, when we were, you know, in college and just out of college, we sort of were like, what are these these movies that maybe we missed out on when we were a little younger or whatever. And so we discovered Highlander. So we were like, let's watch them all. And it was Highlander 2 where we were like, what the heck is this? Like that's
I think we watched Highlander 2 because we read on a list somewhere it was like the #1 worst movie of all time, and we're like, we got to see it.
Yeah,
right.
And we watched that and we're like, it really kind of planted the seed for us that we could do this. We could tell our own story because if that movie got made, as bad as it was, as bad as that script was, you know, like. Surely we could do this. And so it kind of inspired us. That terrible movie inspired us.
Kyle, if you think about it, I can't think of a better segue than 2 of our biggest inspirations for writing this film are Quentin Tarantino and Highlander.
That is true. That is true.
That's going to be one of my next questions was what was your inspiration for getting into this? Was this sure? Yeah, man. So before you guys were writing stories about dead rock stars, what kind of storytelling were you guys into in the 90s and early 2000s?
Well, I think we, if you know, I listened to a couple of your episodes, and I kind of was a little bit panicked. Like, what am I going to say that I'm still loving that, I'm still doing that from the time I was a kid? And my answer was going to be, man, I still love stories. You know, like stories from my childhood, like have been so central. Like I get choked up thinking about a good story sometimes, you know?
Right.
And so whether it's just, you know, storytelling among friends or a written form or a visual form, I just love stories and I always have. And so whether it was, you know, we've already talked about Star Wars, but whether it's Star Wars, whether it's, you know, some of the famous, wonderful books we've read, you know, that we've drawn inspiration from, Harry Potter or whatever, you know, I just love a good story. Story always just moves me, you know, on a really deep level, for sure.
Yeah, I didn't put it together until I saw a comedian tell a skit that Harry Potter is just Star Wars, and I didn't get it. I was like, what? And so he was telling his thing. And I was like, that guy is right. I mean, you've got the orphan living with his aunt and his uncle who aren't really they're kind of his aunt and his uncle, right? And he's living there, and and then he goes and he finds out he's got these powers, and he goes and lives with this other people, and you've got Yoda and you've got Dumbledore, and then you've got all the other people, and I was like, that's Star Wars. No wonder I love Harry Potter so much. It's just like a retelling.
True. It is true. Well, that's George Lucas's whole thing, is that really every story is just a version of the hero's journey, right?
Yeah.
And when he created Star Wars, what he wanted to do was take just an absolutely familiar story, but put it in a new setting.
Yeah.
Like, let's put it in space. So we're doing space opera, we're doing space cowboys, however you want to think about it.
Space Cowboys is pretty metal.
That is pretty metal.
That is too.
And so Jay and I kind of tried to do a similar thing with our book. We were constantly talking about inspirations. Well, this is sort of like this, and this is sort of like this, and those were things that we sort of used as we were writing and kind of creating the story.
I was born in August of '77, so I was actually in utero in my mother's womb for the opening of Star Wars. I was there. I didn't,
right. You were that. You had to.
I really was. Like, my parents went. They saw it, and I was in the womb. But my entire childhood, the two things that are very formational for me was we had the sandbox out in the backyard, and I had Star Wars figures and I had G.I. Joe, and I could go out there and I could create whatever world I wanted to out in that sandbox. And you got to be on Tatooine, or you got to do whatever. And then one of my friends got the Return of the Jedi, the Rancor pit. And, I just remember being just blown away by that and that creativity and just whatever you want to do. And so if it was Star Wars or G.I. Joe or the Transformers or He-Man, I was into all those action figures. And in a sense, in the 80s too, professional wrestling was a big deal. And
Hulk Hogan
had those action figures that you could wrestle with. My cousins had those. And so from a very early age, I did two things. One, I'd go over and have dinner at my neighbor's house, and they loved to tell my parents that I would come over and ruin the plot of any movie or any story, or like, I'd sit there at dinner and I would tell the whole story to them, like line for line. And the second thing I'd do is I would make these worlds up with these action figures. For me, that's never stopped. Creativity has always been a big part of my journey, my story, communicating, making people laugh, making people kind of surprised even by what we're talking about, how we got there. In some ways, our story is that way. There's some sneaky, important things that are going on between the lines of our story. But at the same time, it's absolutely ludicrous and ridiculous.
Right.
And so that kind of sums me up a little bit. Like, I love the weirder and cooler. Reading the comic books when I was little, my dad just had piles of comic books. And so X-Men and Spider-Man were my favorites. And, in some ways, our book's a little bit like the X-Men. And we've taken...
It is, isn't it?
We've taken different things and put them together and created a super team.
Nice. Who could have had a bald-headed rock star that could have been your leader? I was trying to think who.
Michael Stipe. He's still alive, though.
Yeah.
He's still alive, though.
Yeah, you have to wait. All right. Well, I hope we didn't just premature for Michael Stipe. I hope something doesn't happen.
True. That's a good point.
I'll have to look online, make sure he's still kicking, make sure everything's
right.
Okay. That's me in the corner.
All right. So let's get into your book a little bit. So how did the idea came about writing a book about dead rock stars that are secret agents? I did see a clip on Twitter that you guys might have to give Sonic Drive-In a little kudos.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right. Earlier on in our careers, when commuting was more of a thing, post-pandemic, I think that slowed down quite a bit. But pre-pandemic and commuting, Kyle and I would usually spend just about every morning talking about whatever movie or whatever TV show or whatever book. Right. And we would just go over the plots and go over the plot points. And that was kind of our world. And like Kyle kind of alluded to, just like probably everybody else on the planet that's a nerd, you say to yourself, I think I could do a better job than they could. Right. And we talked about it, and we had a lot of bravado, when we were just consumers.
Yeah.
And every once in a while we come up with ideas, and some of them were okay ideas and some of them were really dumb ideas, but we had ideas and we talk about them. And one day I was riding and I pulled up in the Sonic stall, like you said, and ordered my Diet Dr. Pepper and
I was going to ask
burrito.
what your order was. Yeah.
bacon, egg and cheese breakfast burrito at Sonic is the best thing on the menu.
Yeah.
By far, and you can get it 24 hours a day or however long they're open. You can get it at night. It's still better at night. And the Route 44 half price on the app, it's where it's at. Anyway.
Nice.
The idea kind of came out, and Kyle presented this idea. Kyle, I'll let you pitch the idea you told me.
What stall were you in, though? I think we got to get to stall.
Number 19.
Stall 19, yeah. So Jay's sitting in stall 19. I'm probably, somewhere on Interstate 65 or something. I don't know. And I said, Jay, I've had this idea for a while. It's kind of been floating around, and I think it might be kind of fun. I said, basically your intro is exactly what I told him. I was like, imagine, like, what if all these dead rock stars, what if they weren't dead? What if they're still alive? What if they're secret agents? And Jay's response, I'll never forget it. I feel like, Jay, we've been telling this kind of wrong. I feel like I said, like, just goofing off, like, yeah, that's $1 million idea, right? And you were like, Kyle, that's not $1 million idea. That's $1 billion universe.
Right. Sure is.
And that's just sort of been our, the ignition that kind of got us started.
Just so we're clear, to date, I think the universe we're still a couple grand in the hole right now as far as the universe goes.
Right.
That's right.
Still got a few little points to hit before
we're
we
really
get to
excited
that billion.
to be making tens and tens of dollars on this book.
Right. I forgot to say it in the beginning of my line, but normally I say, welcome to the podcast where tens of people will probably hear you.
Absolutely.
Hey, we're going in the right direction.
Take your tens and our tens, put them together. We might get to 100, man.
Hundreds. You never know.
We can do this.
So how long was the process from the idea of it to where you're holding the book in your hand?
Yeah.
In 2018, I completed a book that I wrote. I self-published it. And I kind of had this mentality of this is something we can actually do. Kyle and I didn't really know how to write a work of fiction. We wanted to write a movie, but we didn't know how to write a script. And so we ended up just starting to write. And I was like, let's just try. I mean, I'd done it once. So I was like, come on, let's just try. And so I wrote a couple chapters, and then Kyle got excited. He started writing chapters. And then we realized within a couple of weeks in 2018 that we might maybe have something because life happens, right? I mean, we have full-time jobs. We have everything going on. There'd be streaks. There'd be moments where things would really get going. But I don't think we completed it until April of 2020, maybe, Kyle? Do you have a better memory than that?
Yeah, the first draft, the first hit the period on the last sentence. It was about April of 2020. So from about September of 18 to April of 2020 was the first draft. Now we've gone back over it probably twice since then. We've had several editors look at it. And, I mean, it's been a huge process to what it is now. And we still have friends that are fond of saying you got a typo on page 109 or, those sort of things. But, it happens. It happens. But yeah, it was a full process. Jay truly is the more entrepreneurial of the two of us. I am very much, kind of like I live my life in fear,
Right.
I'm always like, hey man, I don't know about that, And so he was so like, dude, we can do this. Let's do it. And we'd tried some things before and never really, we'd do something for a while and it kind of fall off. And so, I kind of just sort of half-hearted was like, sure, yeah, let's do it.
Right.
But I mean it when I say it. He wrote the first 2 chapters, and after I read those, I was inspired, and I was like, I think we can do this. And same as he did. And so just chapter by chapter, section of the book by section of the book, we just made a plan. We worked it together. I would read his chapters and make some edits, and he would read my chapters and make some edits. And ultimately, what you hold in your hand when you hold a copy of the Dead Rockstars is not, Kyle wrote half and Jay wrote half. I mean, we wrote the entire thing together because we poured over every chapter together and walked away saying, I sign off on this 100%. This is us. This is our baby. This is our baby. Yep.
So was it
ugly or pretty? It's ours.
It's ours.
Was it difficult to get it published once you guys had written the draft and you're like, okay, we've looked through it a lot. So what was the process to getting somebody to actually publish it for you?
I'll answer quickly, Kyle, and then I'll let you answer. Yes, it was hard, and it was not fun, and I don't recommend it. I give it 0 out of 10 stars as far as trying to get it done.
You notice when you look at it at the cover of our book, you see that our names are real small down at the bottom because ain't nobody buying that book because our names are on it. Now, if you go to a bookstore or you look online and you see an author and the name's like half the cover,
right?
Those are the ones who can easily get their books sold.
John Grisham. That's all you see on the spine of it is his name.
That's right. Stephen King. It's like Stephen King, and then the title is tiny. It's I'm getting the book because Stephen King wrote it. But we had an agent for about a 7 or 8 minutes. But then
I'd say like a half hour. We had a half hour.
Yeah. Good half hour. We had an agent, and that kind of fell apart. So we were a little discouraged by that, and we sent book proposals to every agency that we could think of, and so we tried and ended up. I had a friend who recommended Morgan James is who we ended up publishing with, and told us about their process, and just like providentially, their CEO was in Nashville, where both of us live, and we just sort of happened to be able to run into him. We pitched our book, and he was like, "Guys, that sounds awesome. That sounds like a lot of fun." He said, "Send me a manuscript." We have our committee. Like, again, we said earlier, they're a boutique publisher who only publishes a few books a year, like 15 fiction books a year.
Yeah, they do 200 books a year, but only 12 or 15 of them are fiction. Most of them are trade books or like marketing books or even dental trade books. They do a lot of those things and do well with that. But their fiction, they're pretty selective. They only do 12 a year, and it's a pretty interesting process, even how they did that. But not the big publishers will do thousands of books. This book, 200 sounds like a lot, but like in comparison, it is a publisher. It's a major publisher, but it's boutique. We didn't self-publish. Like you can find the book wherever books are sold, which was really important to us. But it's a boutique publisher.
Yeah, but they loved it. They passed it through their committee. They read it over, and they approved it. And I mean, it's kind of as long as it took to like work through the process of trying to get someone to read it, to look at it, to consider it. It came together just as quickly in the opposite fashion for them to say, "Yeah, we want to do this." And so within a few weeks, we had a signed deal, and then became the process of like, "Whoa, now we really got to finalize this thing and get it to them." So it was a challenge, but it was fun.
They also did something cool that maybe this is just what everybody does now. I don't know, but they ran it through AI. And when was that? Was that like 2022 when they did that?
21, I think.
2021. And so like to hear about AI in 2021 in that capacity,
no one talked about it then.
What is this? And so they gave us like I don't know how many pages the report was. It was like maybe 15 pages or something like that, wasn't it, Kyle?
Yeah, it was thick.
And they ran it through AI, and they told us whether or not, based on the AI, this was going to be a successful book, if it matched up to other best-selling fiction pieces. And we even got a chart of the flow of action and narrative and talking and all those kind of things.
Wow.
Character profiles. They told us what each character was like and if they had a voice.
That's scary.
It is scary. But for us, we were dying for some affirmation, and for them to say, your book matches up with 71% of best-selling fiction.
Yeah.
We're like, let's go.
Yeah, let's do it. Yeah, that's always good to hear too. Wow, I didn't know they did. That's crazy, but yeah, man. Well, I've used AI for writing descriptions of podcasts, and I just type in a couple bits of like what I would say, and you hit enter. And then this beautiful novel gets put right in front of you. And I was like, how does this even work? I was like, I don't understand, but it's great.
If you have seen the new Disney movie Wish, I think it was written by AI. I am not even kidding. I think it was like, here's what we want. We want an evil king, and we want animals that are cute, and we want a star, and we want a song, and we want a blah, blah, blah. Throw it in the AI, and then boom, here's the movie. And then they just ran with it, and they gave someone credit for it. Because it makes no sense. and it's rough. I'm sorry, Disney. I hope you would love to make Dead Rockstars for us one day, but I just have to say, Wish is no bueno. It's not good.
I'm friends with our local theater. We only have one theater in my little town, but I'm friends with the manager, and they do an indie film festival each year. And I've always thought, when am I going to make like a short film? I was like, is it be this year? I don't know, but they're going to do one in April. And so films are due by January 1st. And I was like, all right, I'm going to write a film. I'm going to shoot a film. It's going to be short. So what should it be? And I was like, I can't think of a topic. And my wife's like, well, why don't you just ask Chat GPT? And I was like, you can do that? So I did. I was like, I want to make a film. And it asked me all kinds of questions. Boom, 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 boom. And then, after about 30 minutes of doing questions, it spit out a script. And so when you said Disney did AI for Wish, I was like, I can believe it. I know it because it just did it for me.
So how was the script?
It was good. I didn't mind it, but I was like, I can't believe that. That's crazy.
But see, really, that's your story right there.
Are you going to shoot it?
Maybe. Well, we'll see. My premise was the short film was about trying to put together it was auditions to fill like into your garage rock band, right? The band is looking for a new person. And so the short film was all the different people that came in to audition, right? For like a new bass player or something. And so it would just be a whole bunch of people playing all kinds of crazy people that would come into audition. And that was going to be like sort of what the short film was about.
So that's your premise right there, is you're stumped on what your short film should be about. So you go into to Chatbot GPT to write it for you. But as that's happening, the crazy people that come into your world are the real story, but you're not noticing it because you're so locked into your, trying to get AI to do it for you.
Oh, that's good.
The story's all around you.
The actual short story is him trying to figure out what he's going to do. And then them, and then
inside the audition process.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's meta.
That's Chatbot GPT cannot think that way. They don't think in that dimension.
No,
so that's why they'll never replace us, Jay. They'll never replace us.
That's right.
I agree. I think they're going to help us, but they're not going to replace us. That's for sure.
All right. So let's get into the book. We've gotten a long ways to get to the book. I'm looking at my timer down here. So we'll talk as much about the book without spoiling it because everybody needs to go buy a copy of The Dead Rock Stars. It's a great story. It's a great read.
How long did it take you, Matt?
It didn't take, let's see. I am not a reader. So the fact that I read your book within a week's time says a lot about what you wrote because I can't remember the last time I read a book.
Oh, that's awesome.
I go in spurts, but it's a real good read. I found an easy read. It's got a lot of dialogue, which I like. If it's got too much description, I just start flipping pages. And I was like, let me get more of the dialogue part. Like I was trying to read Interview with a Vampire once by Anne Rice. And it's like, she's gone on 3 paragraphs about what this door looks like. I was like, I just started flipping pages.
Go through the door already.
Right? Just go through the door. I want to hear more what the vampires are doing.
That's Game of Thrones. Game of Thrones, man. He's going to tell you what everybody was eating at the table and what ingredients the meal was made from, and and all that. That man loves to describe a meal.
Kyle, you better be careful. You know how I feel about RR.
Yeah. he's something.
All right. So to start the book, we meet Buddy Holly and Elvis Presley. Start us off in the beginning. What made you guys want to start the Dead Rock Stars with those two icons?
I mean, I think Jay would be the only one to answer that because it came straight from his imagination. Why'd you do that, Jay? I've never wondered. I've always wondered. I've never asked.
That's a good question. I don't know that I have a really solid answer. If we're talking about why you're still doing that or what are you still doing, right? I was also born the week after Elvis passed away, and so Elvis was a huge part of my young childhood. You couldn't escape it on television. My parents loved him. My parents saw him live. Being in Nashville and Memphis being, a few hundred miles away, it was nothing but Elvis all the time. Elvis did a lot of his recording in Nashville, and so it was nothing but Elvis all the time. So I used to, as a 3-year-old go around singing "Hunka Hunka Burning Love,"
Right.
and my parents loved it. And so I've always been enamored with Elvis. The more I've learned about him, the more I've appreciated him. And I always loved the idea of, in real life, Elvis wanted to be a secret agent. So I love the idea of Elvis being a secret agent and us getting to watch Elvis do that. Also, I loved the fact that Elvis gets cited a lot. There's a lot of Elvis sightings. The National Enquirer built their business around aliens and Elvis, basically.
Yep.
And people that were pregnant with alien Elvises, I think, was one of the things they did. I don't know. But the sightings were all the time. And so I thought, what better place than for Elvis to be in his garb, in Las Vegas, and nobody cared that was him, because they just thought he was another impersonator. And so
there's probably
I
20
thought that
others
was
there.
interesting. Also, Buddy Holly is most people from the age of, I don't know, let's say 30 to whatever, could tell you one thing about Buddy Holly, at least. And it would be, if it's not Weezer, they would tell you about horn-rimmed glasses. And so I think I started there because those were two iconic figures that you visually knew exactly what they looked like, and it wasn't hard to miss it or misunderstand it. And so, and secondly, I wanted to get right into Elvis, karate chopping people in a karate suit. I can't think of anything more cool than that. Bedazzled karate fighting. Yes, sign me up.
That's right. So the book is set, and it's 1999, and we're about ready to hit Y2K. And so it takes place right at then. And so you see Elvis Presley goes right into just butt kicking Central, Chuck Norris, all in a hotel room there in Las Vegas. And I was thinking, man, it's like, what would this look like on screen? Of him kicking in the door and, and that voice kicks in and the black hair, or maybe it's gray by this point, comes in and he just starts, going through methodically and taking out all the cannon fodder bad guys that are there.
Yeah, the henchmen.
Yeah, the henchmen. That's a good word. Yeah, just walking right through them. That would be great. After we get introduced to Buddy Holly and Elvis, very shortly after that, we find out John Lennon is on the team, Kurt Cobain, Jerry Garcia, Jim Morrison, and Janis Joplin, and a whole lot of others that I am not going to spoil that are in there as well. And I really got to love Jerry Garcia's character. I was like, man, that's perfect. About how you guys wrote him in there.
Thank you.
And I was like, that was a good choice. And Jim Morrison as silent and not speaking the whole time. I was like, I kind of dig it.
Well, you know the Easter egg behind that. Let me tell you the story behind that.
Yeah,
so as
good.
Jay and I were writing, it kind of occurred to us that so many of these people have already had biopics made about them.
Yeah.
And a lot of them were made quite a long time ago. And so for some of these people to be aged in our story, they're older in our story.
Yeah.
Well, they're the same age as the people that played them in 1990 or in 1978 or whatever, And so we're like, what if the same people just played them again? And so if the Doors, the 1991 movie about Jim Morrison and, the band The Doors was played by Val Kilmer. And Val Kilmer is one of our favorite actors of all time. And I think in 2014, he developed throat cancer. And so he can't speak very well anymore. And so our desire was if Val could play Jim again, we would need to write it in such a way where he doesn't have to speak a whole lot. And so our desire was let's do that. Let's write it in a way. So, and it also fits with kind of how weird Jim Morrison is, that he would be a guy who'd actually take a vow of silence for some reason.
Yeah. Except for when he sings. Yep.
That's right.
And Jim Morrison was the fight instructor, wasn't he?
Yeah. That's right.
You might need a body double for that one.
Well, that's true. That's true. Yeah.
Now, 2018, it wasn't quite like it is now.
Or probably. Yeah.
But it's okay. The spirit of it is there. We spent you said you could just see it as a movie. Well, we wrote it that way. I mean, we see a movie, and the way we see it, we spent a lot of time talking about which character would be who. We talked about Jack Black being Jerry Garcia.
I got to tell you what. when I was typing up a script for you guys, I was like Jay and Kyle. I was like, man, I'm going to keep thinking of Jack and Kyle Tenacious D the whole time. And then I kept started thinking about what I was like, Jack Black. I was like, where would he fit in this? And then I thought, man, Kyle Gass could play Jerry Garcia. That's for sure. Or Jack Black could play Jerry Garcia. Either one of them.
I don't know if Jerry in real life was a huggable guy, but in our imaginations, we just think he's huggable, man.
Yeah,
we just think
he sure looks huggable, doesn't he?
That's a dude you want to hang out with, you want to get to know, spend some time with, chat with. Yeah. That's why we gave him the role we gave him in the book. Because he doesn't seem to be the most adept at maybe hand-to-hand combat, but he's definitely got an important role on the team. So
well, Jack Black could definitely handle some of that hand-to-hand combat.
Oh, he could.
With the movies he's done, I'm sure he could put that in there.
Got some dexterity for sure. If you follow him on TikTok, you get more than you bargained for.
I got to do that. I don't follow him on TikTok. Well, I don't really follow anybody on TikTok, but
he's a worthy follow for sure, especially if you
check him out.
I'm pretty sure he did I don't think he did a Hulkbuster TikTok, but he did a Hulk one and he did an Iron Man, and it's pretty impressive what he did.
All right. I'll have to check it out. So reading the book, I was trying to think of celebrities that you left out. But I don't want to spoil anything, but there's one I want to bring up. And I was like, you've got Lennon, but there's no George Harrison.
Yeah. When did George die? George was still alive in 99, I think, wasn't he?
Was he? I thought he died.
I think he was.
Maybe that's why he was. I thought George Harrison died. I know he died of cancer. I was thinking maybe the celebrities just have to have like a tragic death.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, we wanted to be sensitive. He
died in November 29th, 2001.
2001.
2001. Well, there you go.
Yeah.
I thought he died in the 80s or 90s or something.
No, these were real people, and we tried to be sensitive to the fact that they're real people, and some of them died in really horrific ways, and and so we tried to just stay away from a few, and some might quibble with our taste of including John Lennon because he was murdered, but in our story, the way we try to frame the story is that sometimes the dead rock stars use real life things that happen, and spin them, There's, I'll just reveal this part, Jay. I hope it's okay with you. There's a story about they tried to get Ronald Reagan to join the Dead Rock Stars after his attempted assassination, and he turned them down. He was like, "No," but it was all set up perfectly for him to walk away from the presidency and lead this secret agency.
I'm going to correct you a little bit. They didn't try to get him to be a part of the Dead Rock Stars. They asked him to join the DRS. That's a distinction.
True.
That's a distinction.
That's true. That's true. They did ask him to join the DRS. So
anyway,
all that to say, when we wrote that in the story, we didn't realize the sort of the backstory of his assassination attempt, and so there was someone else who was actually shot as well. And so we were like, oh gosh, so we can't say that they faked the assassination, and all, that's really weird. So how do we do it where we write it in where they use what really happened?
Right.
So that was sort of it's kind of the way we got around some of those things. But so we left some people out for sure.
There were some that were a little too gruesome for us,
Right.
Marvin Gaye, Selena, some of those are
Marvin Gaye, yes.
Too much to kind of take in. But on the other end of it, I think I'm trying to remember what our tagline is, Kyle. What's our little thing that we say at the very beginning of the book? To those that
to those we've lost but still love.
Yeah. And for us, it's a love letter to an alternate reality, what could have been, a chance for these people that the world loves so much, for them to have a way to come back and love the world back. I think we try to honor them. I think we try to be sensitive to that. We keep it light. We don't dwell too much in the sad stuff, but there's some important things there of addiction is a big part of a lot of these people's stories.
You've got a couple of sections where you guys deal about the life they used to live versus the life they live now.
Yeah, that's part of the fun of it, is imagining, what would happen if these guys a lot of them who struggle with addiction got clean, and then 20 years down the road, who would they be? And what would they be like? And
or 5 years down the road, or 2 years,
right.
For some of them.
Yeah, for sure.
And that's one thing I was thinking about. The book is very clean. I mean, anybody can read this book. I mean, doesn't have like any kind of age limit or anything to it. It's a real good read for anybody at particularly any age level could read it, because it was at
it's a little violent. I would say it's a little
in
violent.
In places, it is a little violent, but I was like, this is really clean, because these rock stars were not really clean people, when in their day. But the book is very clean. I wondered if that was a choice, just language and behaviors and things like that. I didn't know if that was your a choice you guys made, or what was your thinking on that?
If you read a lot of literature, literature isn't typically filled with graphic language all the time. I mean, some of them are, but I mean, for the most part, even things that are quite graphic, Game of Thrones has got a lot of graphic stuff in it, but the language is not nearly as bad as, say, even like the HBO show or something like that. Like this, in lots of literature, there's not a lot of language. We made a choice. For us, we wanted something that we could be proud of and not be ashamed of. We wanted it to be true to kind of the spirit of things, but at the same time, wanted to be careful so that as many people as possible could read it and not be too bothered by things. Additionally, our publisher has a policy about that where they're pretty concerned about language. And so I think, Kyle, maybe we had like 3 curse words in it originally, and I think now we're down to maybe no.
Yeah, they made us cut a few out. We had a few in there, just for that sprinkle of authenticity. But they made us cut them out, and so we tried to write around it a little bit.
Yeah, I think one was I think we got to keep one because it was a technical term, and 2 because it was a location. So I think we did okay with those.
So I thought that was a smart choice about keeping it nice and clean, because I was thinking, man, I was like, this is a real easy PG-13 kind of flick. And I mean, and depending on how you put it together, almost PG, depending on how you do it. I was nice and clean. And I thought that was real smart, just to, as you're right, as so many people could get a hold of it as possible, especially folks that might be new to some of these characters and not know a lot about them or their music. And
we hope
that.
We hope that what we've written is something that will continue the fandom of a lot of these people, because you get to see a little of their personality. But Kyle's done a great job with a Spotify playlist where he put all of the music chronologically in a Spotify playlist, so you can listen to the music while you're kind of going through the book. And
nice.
I think we've got links on our social media, but it's a really useful tool. And we've noticed that some of our younger readers have started to develop a little bit of, a little bit of some knowledge and fandom of music.
Yeah, because I mean, it's music. It never really goes out of style. It just sort of sequins around a little bit, and especially now with social media, my kids know all kinds of old stuff that our generation, we wouldn't know the old stuff unless you spent money, to go and get it. Otherwise, we didn't have access to it.
Yeah, unless your parents had the records.
Yep.
And in my case, they had 8 tracks, so that was helpful.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I grew up listening to the Coasters and the Carpenters, man. That's all my parents played in the car.
Hey, so were you happy when you got a carpenter in the story?
Yes. No, I picked up on it. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's my mom's favorite. I was trying to think, do I want to go into that or not?
No, it's okay. It's all right.
Yeah.
I didn't know about her, just as a quick aside. She is one of the best drummers I've ever seen. Have you ever seen Karen Carpenter play the drums?
I don't think I've ever watched her play drums before.
Just go to YouTube when you get a second and look it up. It'll blow you away how good she is, how good she was.
And
Incredible.
the fact that she could play and sing at the same time. I find that that's a talent. I mean, I play I'm a music teacher, public school elementary music teacher. I play a few instruments, but I cannot sing and play anything at the same time without messing one or the other thing up. And
it's hard.
And so anybody that sings and plays their instrument at the same time, I was like, man, I don't know how you do that. I can't put the two together. I'm going to mess one of the two up. I got to concentrate on one or the other.
Yeah, I hear you.
So the book centers the main person in your book is Mr. Cole Denton, who is not a rock star, and it centers around him and his involvement with the DRS, the Dead Rock Stars, and so how did you guys go about wanting to center? Well, I mean, the book is centered around a lot of the rock stars, but what made you decide to build a story around a guy who was not a rock musician?
Yeah, so anytime you have a story where someone enters into the universe that's not their own, you need to have a vantage point. You need to be able to see it because you're an outsider too. And so we've been talking a lot of Star Wars, whether it's Luke Skywalker. What's the Force? Yeah, so anytime you have a story, you need a lens to see it through. So again, whether it's Star Wars, Luke Skywalker doesn't know what the Force is. He's got to be told what the Force is. Harry Potter, he's magical. He's got all these things, but he doesn't know any of it. He doesn't know what a Muggle is. He has to be told the vocabulary and all these things. And so we realized that we needed someone else who's coming into the world who doesn't know the world, just like a reader wouldn't know the world. They may know the people, but they don't really know this new universe. And so we decided that the route we would go is not necessarily to bring in another rock star. We'd bring in someone who's a tech star and someone who can help them fight against a battle that they don't see coming and that they're not equipped to win. And so they need someone with a new perspective. And the reader, though, needs someone who can help them understand this world and walk through it and see it through the lens that they're seeing it through.
All right. So you've got a pretty good twist in your book. What was your inspiration and your idea to come up with who was going to be the twist in the book? I don't want to call him the bad guy, but because we don't know if he's a bad guy. But what was your idea about?
I'll take a run at it, Kyle. If you want to, I'll go first, and you can add on if you want a little bit.
Be real careful, Jay. Careful.
I shall. It's one of our favorite things to ask the question, did people figure it out? And so far, the overwhelming majority is surprised. I think for me, being a young child and being in the room when Darth Vader said to Luke, "I'm your father," blew my brain. Like, it literally blew my brain. Like, I didn't know what to do with that. You think about Harry Potter and Snape and all the different, red herrings that are kind of there and trying to understand who's the bad guy, who's good and who's bad, and how does this all work together. And then you mix that in with Marvel. And one of the things that I think I would argue DC movies haven't done well. Marvel movies have done well. Some of that has to do with the grounding of the humanity of the character. But I would also say that I think Marvel has done a fantastic job with bad guys. A lot of the bad guys have really good reasons to be bad guys. And so it's not that they're evil. It's that they see the world a certain way and they want to make the world better because of injustices they've experienced. And so for us, we wanted to create like a shock. We wanted to create something that made sense when you go back and think about it. And we wanted to create something that fit within the framework of a real person's ideology. Obviously, antagonists or villains or whatever you want to call it, like, those people in the real world don't do the things that our people do. I mean, not most of the time, right? But for us, to allow them to kind of be a little bit out there, and do some things that you wouldn't expect them to do and have some surprises in it. I think it was really fun for us to write and to make sure that we were covering our tracks and throwing out some red herrings here and there. And you think it's one person, you think it's another. And it's been a lot of fun to listen to people try to figure it out in real time. I'll get text messages. I got one where a woman was taking the symbol that we have in the book, and she was trying to pull it apart, trying to tell it, and then she'd give us guesses, and then she was like, "Oh, I got it!" And I mean, it took her longer than we expected, because it's not supposed to be that big of a secret, but I mean, it's a little bit of like, what is it? And when it gets uncovered, you're like, oh, that makes sense. And same thing for the bad guy. Hopefully, when you go back and read it, you're like, okay, I understand some of the motivation. I understand why they did some of the things they did. Was that good, Kyle, or is that too much?
It's good.
No, it's good. Good looking job. Back at the story, I'm like, oh, I should have known at this point. When that happened, I should have known. Which
is exciting. That makes us feel good. Like
I should have known job then, but I didn't pick up on it. But it was good. I love the I see dead people kind of twist. You're like, what? You're like, I never thought of that. You're kidding me.
Well, it's funny. We did write that into the story, that joke, but that was long after it was over, and so we had to check, had that movie come out at that point in time for that joke to be real? And so it was a pretty fresh joke in the time frame of our story when Cole actually says those words. I see dead people.
I feel like I probably wrote that joke 4 times, and we only got to keep one of them, which is good. It was proper, I think.
Right. So what was your research like when you guys were writing dialogue for each of these rock stars, trying to make them sound and speak like the people are used to hearing them? What was that process like?
That was challenging, because again, these were real people, and they had real, patterns of speech. They had real, things that they would say and do. And so we watched a lot of YouTube, to be honest, like interviews, and what I tried to find was not so much, like the standard interviews where they're just kind of giving their fluff answers, but the ones where it was like a recording of like Jan Wenner talking to John Lennon, and it was just sort of this off the cuff sort of thing. And he's going to build an interview for Rolling Stone magazine about it, but like to see the interstitials, the conversations between the conversation, things like that. That's what we tried to really pick up on is how does Jimi Hendrix talk?
It's very surprising how he talks, actually.
Yeah. It's not when Dick Cavett, on TV, ask him questions or whatever. It's like the in between times, So who was he really? And so we tried to match their speech pattern, words they say, phrases they use. We tried to nail down phrases they use,
right,
and use those things to sort of match an authenticity. But we knew that we were never going to be able to nail like 100%, like that's perfect. But we wanted to be in the ballpark. We wanted to be close, so that it had a ring of authenticity. I know Jay read a lot of books also to get a lot of background and to feel like he understood the characters better.
I read 2 or 3 Elvis biographies. There's a couple that are, The Long Train to Memphis, I think, is one of them. And it's a fantastic read, 2 parts, just really, really in depth from his, birth all the way to, the end. I read a similar book on the Beatles, and it was really helpful to kind of understand John Lennon. And then I'm reading one now on Janis Joplin. I'm a little late to that party, but I want to understand Janis Joplin. Also, we spent a lot of time trying to understand who they were, and then kind of playfully imagine what they would be like in 1999. If Elvis is 60 at that point, what does a person removed 18 or so years from his, 20 years from his death or whatever? What is a person like that? At the same time, for Kurt Cobain or Tupac and Biggie, they're pretty fresh on the scene of being who they were to now being who they are. And so we enjoyed that. Tupac is a artist. He's a
yes, he is. You dropped a spoiler. I wasn't going to put his name out there.
No, that's okay. That's all right. But we had some fun with them. We had some fun, imagining what they would be like and what they'd be like, in a place of safety and recovery and health,
right,
and the some of the unfortunate realities of their world no longer quite being the case. Yes. Family is a big part of our story, and
it is.
It's not unlike the X-Men in a lot of ways. These people all coming together, and we wanted to write them dialogue wise as faithfully as we could, but in some of them, we just wanted to have fun. And it's like, people change a little bit. And so, if they're not a certain way, we can make them however we want, but we wanted to be true in general to the spirit of things. What was John Lennon's favorite phrase he used to say in talking all the time, Kyle?
Know what I mean?
Know
Like
what I
it's
mean?
one word.
Yeah,
Know what I
he
mean?
used it a lot. Yeah, I noticed it in the book.
That's because he does it a lot. Like it's
Yeah.
it's a lot. It's excessive when you watch a video.
Now, there's a couple moments in the book that I really liked, and I was really just like think they would look so cool on the big screen. One, the end battle when Cole's plane like shows up through the smoke, right, and everybody's fighting, and I was trying to think, man, that would be pretty sweet. And you see him, coming in, and he's in the cockpit, and he's waving at get in the plane, get in the plane. And then Elvis doing the exact same thing, but like the silhouette when his character comes in from the smoke and he's about ready to face off with the person who I'm not going to name at the end of the book. When they finally square off and you're like, oh, I was like, man, what would be his cliche 1980s tagline? What would he say when he comes through the smoke, and
that's funny. Well,
we kind of give him a little bit of a tagline in chapter 1. He gets to say it's time to go loco.
Time to go loco. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, what I love about that scene is when we were writing it, I was thinking to myself, like, how long should an action scene be? And, I love classic rock and I love the song Stranglehold. And so that's why I wrote that into that scene where that song's 8 minutes and an action sequence should probably be about 8 minutes. And so I was like, let's have a timestamp, where we can say, this is how long it took for them to get in and do what they had to do and get out. And so that's why he went in and he started the song so that there's a song going, but it also adds like a psychological element. What the song's saying, got you in a stranglehold,
Yeah.
I just thought that was really kind of cool how it all kind of, worked together.
One of our biggest inspirations is, one of the things that we did a whole lot in the book when we first wrote it is we had song lyrics everywhere. I mean, it was just these guys eat, sleep, and breathe music, and so we, our inspiration was Ready Player One. I don't know if you've actually read the Ready Player One book.
Man, we could have a whole nother podcast on that. I loved it.
And so that was one of our big inspirations, and all of the quotes and all of the things and all of the Easter eggs. I mean, Easter egg on top of Easter egg on top of Easter egg. I mean, it's a egg factory. And we wanted to do that. But then, we realized pretty quickly when we started talking to the publisher and the lawyers that you can get sued for that. So
you can't use the lyrics. Yeah.
We really pulled just about all the lyrics out. And but we did keep the song titles. And there are a lot of those. If you listen to the song while you're listening to reading the chapter, it'll click.
Yeah. Yeah, I was going to say you've got a lot of songs that click into what the scene is doing throughout, which is really, really neat little aspect. Another scene that I was thinking, man, I'd like to see on the big screen is Cole's his lair that he builds. Right? I was like, man, what would that look like? Them walking in. I was like, that'd be pretty sweet to see. And Elvis Presley as a janitor. In the first act of the book there, I was like, that would be so cool. The Cole's out there and he's interviewing for jobs and Elvis is playing a janitor and he comes in to try to talk to Cole on the side. I was like, man, what would that even look like? I was like, that's pretty cool.
Well, I love Jay wrote the first draft of the when Cole actually interviews with Elvis, and I love the way he unspooled that, because when someone's dead, they're dead in our world, right? And so even though there's something highly familiar about him, he's like, I recognize this guy, he sings and the way he looks, his sideburns, all these things, but he just doesn't put it together because, Elvis is dead. But then he's sitting across from him.
Elvis is certainly not 60 years old.
Right. Yeah, when he's sitting across from him and it kind of all comes together when the light bulb comes on for him. It's like, I just love the way he unspooled that, and it was just really kind of cool because I think that's the way it would really happen. If you ran into someone, a living dead man, you'd be like, what?
What? Has anyone ever told you look a lot like Elvis Presley?
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
I get it all the time.
Yeah. And by the way, I always pictured, I'm not sure if you pictured him, but Dr. Self in the book. I was like, man, that should be Jeff Goldblum. I was like, I don't know if he ever put that in. I was like, I could see him playing that.
That's a winner. Wow. I like that.
That is good.
Yeah.
Good call. Can I tell him his original name and
go for it? Not? Yeah, go for it.
Just seeing your Iron Man behind. His original name was Dr. Stark.
Dr. Stark, yeah.
And he was supposed to be very close to the snarky, Tony Stark.
Right.
But then we were like, maybe it's just a little too close. So we changed his name, keep it close, but not quite. But change him from kind of cool to kind of creepy. So that was sort of, the tweak that happened. Somewhat based on a professor of ours in college to some degree.
That's always the best inspirations is when they're off of real people. All right, so a couple of like fun questions. If either one of you, if your book was made into a movie, which character would you guys play if they wanted you to be in the movie? What do you think you guys would be excited to play? Which character?
Yeah, man, that's a good one. I'm a terrible actor, so I'd have to be just a really, maybe Elvis could snap my neck as he steps out of the elevator in chapter 1. Yeah, be henchman number 1.
There you go.
It'd be kind of fun to be Bull Langston.
Oh yeah.
It'd be kind of fun to be Bull. I would have a lot of fun playing Elvis, throughout most of the story, Elvis is the one that always knows one more thing than everybody else. And I think that's a lot of fun to kind of play that role.
Yeah, that would be a good one. Well, every time I kept reading about Jimi Hendrix, I kept picturing there's an actor. His name is Daveed Diggs. I don't know if you're familiar with him. But he plays, what I know him from is he plays, Thomas Jefferson in Hamilton.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, where I first met Daveed Diggs and
Snowpiercer, right? He's in Snowpiercer.
I was going to say that the show about the train going through the snow.
Yeah,
Snowpiercer. He's on that one too. I was like, he's young, but
that's a great call. I like that.
They could hold him up. I was like, Daveed Diggs, I think could pull off Jimi
I like
Hendrix.
that a lot. Yeah. We've had a couple. We've had several ideas. I think I said Jamie Foxx, and then Kyle had a great one. A lot of times following the Jim Morrison kind of thought process. Kyle, you had a good one for Jimmy.
Yeah. Andre 3000 already played him in a movie about 10, 12 years ago.
Oh, and Andre 3000 is a good one too. Yeah.
He's getting older, I think he's probably in his 50s by now. And so he could be close to the same age as Jimmy was,
He could perform too. So yeah.
He could. Yeah. He's such an amazing musician. Yeah.
Yeah, that would definitely good. And then Jamie Foxx, I mean, you could throw him as anybody in there. He's so good.
Oh, he's so good. Jamie Foxx is amazing.
So the book ends with it definitely open-ended. So the big question of the book hasn't necessarily been completed. I mean, they did stop the bad guy, but the bad guy's still going. He's not stopped. And so is there any work or any plans for book number 2?
Well, as we've talked ad nauseum now, Star Wars is the inspiration. And after the Death Star blows up, Darth Vader's still out there. His TIE fighter is just twisting off into space. So, we
by the way, they blew up like 2 more Death Stars later on. So.
They did. They just keep making them. Guys, somehow Palpatine is back.
Yep.
We wanted to write a story that had legs, that, not just one and done. We wanted the first story to be, again, like New Hope, like it's a complete story, but there's
more
threads that are left. So we would like to make a trilogy. That's our ultimate plan. We're not interested in doing, 12 different, Dead Rockstar movies or stories,
right.
We want to do a trilogy. We have an idea, pretty solid idea for book 2. And we're starting to formulate a little bit for book 3 to bring it all together. But yeah, that's the big picture plan, that we'd love to make happen.
With a universe, graphic novels would be easy. Cartoons would be easy. Other people telling other stories about, the younger life, that 20 years in between where Elvis passed away in real life versus him becoming a secret agent, there's a lot of stories there. There's a lot of
there is.
fascinating things that could be there. But for us, we want to tell 3 stories, 3 specific time frames, and we want our Star Wars, our New Hope, our Empire Strikes Back, and our Return of the Jedi. And I think we've got the general gist of it. But the important thing, Matt, for us is like we want to make sure people want to read it. You know, it's one thing to pour your heart into something and make it all and do it. But it's if people don't like it, well then, you know, that's what we're doing this for. We get excited about telling stories and hopefully, you know, helping people to have some fun. It's not as easy thing to do anymore.
Right.
A lot of serious things in the world. It's nice to have fun.
Yeah. It's definitely a great story. I'm going to try to get my wife to read it. She is a devourer of books.
Good.
And so she reads tons and tons of stuff, all kinds of stuff.
Well, you could just remind her that there's a love story in there, and that she'll enjoy the love story. And
so I'll see if I can get her to read it. I'm not sure; it's not quite her forte, but she likes to read all kinds of stuff. So we'll see if I can get her to do it. So I think your title for book 2 should be "The Dead Rock Stars." I Am the Walrus.
Oh,
I was thinking that. I was like, boom. I was like, you guys can keep that one.
We're workshopping ideas now. We'll put it in the queue.
Yes, we've gotten some good ones. Some people, somebody talked to us about a doomsday clock as being one of the things.
Yeah. Ooh, an idea. Yep, a doomsday clock. That's not a bad one too. So we're at the end of my show, and I asked everybody sort of the same 6 questions. Just at the end, just kind of fun to see what people say. I did tweak yours slightly because of our topic tonight, but we'll start off like I always start off. And you guys can both answer, or you can take a turn. Doesn't matter. What is your favorite smell?
Oh gosh.
Or one of your favorite smells?
Man. I love a good chocolate dessert smell, whether it's a chocolate pie or a chocolate cake. That's a good one. Pretty nice.
I love vanilla.
Vanilla, yep.
Yeah, I can, as a child, I can think about like homemade vanilla ice cream being made and the churning and the salt and that smell. Yeah. I think that's where it started for me.
What is one of your favorite kinds of sandwiches?
Man, there's a place here in Nashville called Mitchell's Deli, and they've got a chicken portobello. That is my favorite sandwich in the world. It's so good.
That's a good one.
I've eaten enough cheeseburgers in my life to, I don't know, probably populate the earth with cheeseburgers. I think I love a bacon cheeseburger with some barbecue sauce on there. That's my favorite.
Yeah, that's a good one too. What's your favorite kind of drink? I think I might know Jay's.
I mean, Dr. Pepper. I mean, I was born in Texas. You can't take it out of me. I'm a Dr. Pepper boy.
Dr. Pepper, that's a good one.
The sugars have taken over my life, so I've had to go to Diet Dr. Pepper, and by far it is my drug of choice when it comes to beverage.
Yeah, well, Diet Dr. Pepper, I think it's the best of any of the diet drinks. It's pretty good.
When you jump into diet drinks, the aftertaste is just
awful.
All consuming, and Diet Dr. Pepper has the least amount of that, in my opinion.
Yes, it does. What is one thing that makes you happy every time it happens?
Man, these days it's when I find someone who's read the book and loved it.
Yeah.
I mean it. It just brings such joy to my heart when someone's, man, I read your book. It was so good. You know, that really, I love it. It makes me happy.
I agree. I'm gonna say the same one thing. It's just maybe it's because that's what we're eating and sleeping and breathing right now. But when someone gives us a compliment that's specific, that they loved this or they thought about this. Somebody very early on said to me, he was explaining it and he was talking to his daughter and he was like, you have to read this book. I loved it. You know how the Gilmore Girls, how the dialogue is like in the Gilmore Girls? They were like, it's like that. And I was like, oh my goodness. You just compared me to like one of the best, dialogue writers in Hollywood right now. And so like for that kind of a comment, I was like, oh yeah, let's be the Gilmore Girls.
That's a good
high
one.
Bar.
And so since we got a couple of movie buffs here, what's a movie soundtrack that moved you the most? What's a very memorable movie soundtrack?
Ooh, man. It not necessarily moved me, but fondest childhood memories are cranking the Top Gun soundtrack and swimming in my best friend's pool in his backyard, playing with the boys, swimming and playing and Highway to the Danger Zone, you know, like all that stuff. I think that would have to be one of the tops for me, for sure.
That's a good pull, for sure.
Kyle, when did the movie with the statesman Tom Cruise come out where he was a bartender? Like what year was that? It was Cocktail.
1988.
Yeah. So my mom loved that movie and she loved that soundtrack. And so I have distinct memories of watching the cassette tape go into the car and us singing, Cocktail, singing Kokomo by the Beach Boys and those kind of things.
Kokomo. That was one of my favorites too.
And to drive around with the top down, listening to Kokomo or the windows down, it was like the coolest thing ever. So I would say Cocktail soundtrack.
Yeah, that's a good pull. What is one of the most beautiful things you have ever seen?
Ooh.
I'll go first so you don't have to steal it, and you can appreciate this, Matt. Holding my 4-pound 13-ounce and 5-pound 13-ounce daughters in my hand, watching that whole experience and then holding my hand. For us, we had difficulty having children, didn't know if we could have children. And when it happened, to be able to hold them in my hands, it was, one of them was so ugly too when she came out. Like folds of skin. She looked like an old lady, like when she came out, but it didn't matter. Like I was just overwhelmed with joy.
Yeah.
And you can't use that, Kyle. You got to do something different.
Yeah.
Well, usually when I ask that question, I preference, and don't say your family. Everybody says family.
Yeah.
I can't shake this, so I'll just say it. But when about 15 years ago, I went to New York City, and we went to Times Square at night. And I would rather be in the mountains or on the beach or whatever. I don't downtown. But something about Times Square at night, all that light, being right there in the middle, where every movie ever in Times Square takes place, right there at that little island in the middle of the whole thing, standing there. Something about it was beautiful. Now, it's not the most beautiful thing I've ever seen, but something about that place, that moment, being there, it was just beautiful. So I know that's kind of a weird answer, but at Times Square at night, after I did it, I said, I'm glad I did that. And I'm going to tell everyone, you need to go to Times Square at night. It's just breathtaking.
Right. Those are all great questions, man. So we're going to wrap it up, man. And thanks for coming on the show. Thanks for writing your book. It was a really great read.
Thanks for reading it.
Thank you, man.
Yeah. Well, yeah. Thanks for reaching out. I picked up a few things reading it along the way, and I added a few songs to my Spotify list after going through saying, oh yeah, that is a good song.
Oh, that's great.
I'd have to put that in there. Everybody go out and buy The Dead Rock Stars. It's virtually available most anywhere you get a book. Definitely in the big stores. It's on Amazon, Barnes & Noble. And if you guys got a local bookstore, I'm sure they can order a copy of it for you. No problem whatsoever. Jay and Kyle, it was a pleasure to get to know you guys a bit. And I hope we can have you on the show again, talking about Dead Rock Stars 2 at some point.
We would love that.
So hopefully it won't be in 4 years, but I can't wait. You'll have to let me know whenever that's going to drop. Shoot me an email. I'll be looking forward to catching that one. Thanks for coming on the show, guys.
Thanks for having us.
We had a great time, Matt.
Yeah, man. Remember, folks, find what makes you happy and do it. There's a lot of life out there to live, so make it a good one. Be kind, be nice, be good, and everyone have a good week.